Mr. Gecko, you're a huge inspiration to us all. But who was your muse?
My dear old Nan. She would tell me, always remember to be true to yourself and to use that fast and friendly claim support on the Geico app. I follow her advice to this day.
Get more than just savings. Get more with Geico.
You're listening to 100 Words or Less with Ray Harkins. Welcome one, welcome all to the podcast in which we obsess over the details of punk, hardcore, indie rock, emo, metal, screamo, whatever genre it is, as long as it came from small, sweaty rooms, DIY scenes, and you get it, right? You're here. You've been maybe listening to this particular show for years, or maybe this is your first episode. Regardless, welcome in. Been doing it for almost 13 years, and that is thrilling to say. This is a special episode because, I mean, they're all special, but this one is especially special because I get to welcome Drew Ringo from Sleepytime Trio on the show. If you were not familiar with Sleepytime Trio, they were I would say like a original screamo band, were existing in the early to mid 90s, and they had a very brief time that they were active. But what's exciting is that the amazing label Solid Brass Records is putting together a discography, and on top of all of that, they're doing shows. They're playing some shows later this month with Frail. They're also playing the Dark Days Bright Nights Festival in Richmond, Virginia. They're also playing, DC and Philly and North Carolina, and all of those are with Frail, and it's going to be incredibly exciting because, like I said, this band was, at the ground floor. They were doing this stuff before really any sort of scene had popped up. Yes, there was like disparate bands in different areas, but no one really knew what the lasting effects of this music scene were to have on all the music that we listen to now. And it's great to be able to discuss that because truthfully, I only really got into Sleepytime Trio, it was probably, well after they had broken up, but so probably like early 2000s, I want to say, is when I started to mess around with them. And I'm like, they're really good. Definitely have a lot of kinship with a band like Shotmaker, who I fortunately got into prior to them. But it was just one of those things where I was like, I get to talk with someone from Sleepytime Trio and kind of opine about their existence. And it was great. So I'm excited to bring that to you. If you want to support the show for absolutely free, $0 whatsoever, first of all, there's a reason that I include advertising in this show, is because I endorse this stuff. The people that I do ads for in the shows that are spoken by me are companies that I wholeheartedly believe in. So make sure you visit their sites, you use their promo codes, all that sort of stuff, because truthfully, I don't need to do that, but I feel really passionate about, supporting the community, supporting the scene. And it's great to be able to give back in that way. So please support those sponsors. Also, you can email the show 100wordspodcast@gmail.com and leave a rating and review on Apple Podcasts, and on Spotify, simply leave a rating. All of those things help out. The algorithm then catches on and says like, oh, you listen to this show, so of course you should be listening to this show as well. All of that stuff helps and will take less than 30 seconds to literally do all of that. Email me, leave ratings and reviews, all of that stuff. Just great feedback. Weekly recommendations. There's a link in the show notes to where you'll be able to check out a cumulative playlist of all of the musical recommendations I've been giving over the better part of 2 years now. And the reason I do this is because I also feel passionate about making sure that the word of mouth spreads. I was lucky enough to work in an independent record store for many years. And one of the most satisfying things that I was able to do is talk to people, understand where they're coming from in regards to their tastes, and be like, hey, have you listened to this band? And then truthfully, I learn as well, bouncing back and forth. So that's what I want this dialogue to be. But this week's recommendation is an amazing record that just came out on Iodine Records from a band called Hundreds of AU. The record is called Life in Parallel, and I had Tom Cale, the guitarist, on probably 2-3 years ago. I've been trying to have him back on. We've been missing each other on scheduling, but I had to give a shout out to this record because it just came out. And for those of you that are, screamo heads and are wanting to witness a band that not only exists now, but comes from a lineage of really cool and exciting things. Tom has played in like Seisha and You and I, and it's really, really cool. But Hundreds of AU, it was described to me, and I agree with this description, that it's kind of like, a more edgier Law Dispute. So it has much of that, poetic lyricism, but it's much more, straight and to the point. It's really, really good, and I highly recommend it. So you need to check out the Hundreds of AU record called Life in Parallel. Shout out to our friends at Iodine Records. Love what they do, and love the fact that they continue to release banger after banger. So let's talk to Drew Ringo from Sleepytime Trio. And like I said, they have a discography that's coming out in Solid Brass Records. They're playing shows in the East Coast. All of this is exciting, and you need to tap in. So let's talk to Drew right now. Being from Southern California and getting to experience a lot of the, a lot of the scenes that were converging at that particular time, like in the mid to late 90s, where it's like, you had cool metalcore stuff, you had, screamo, emo, everything that was happening at that time.
Right.
Obviously happened here. But then I noticed in the late 90s, like there was, I was a person that, like, even though I considered myself a punk and hardcore kid, I went to all the shows, like anything that was happening.
Sure.
Just like, I can go see, Bloodlet and then go see Reversal of Man. It's fine.
Yeah.
But something that I noticed where it was like people that were attracted to the, quote unquote traditional screamo scene, there was this rush to be like, I need to find the most obscure or esoteric band from this genre and like just dig deep in ways like, yes, you got your You and I and Seisha, but like we got to go 7 layers deeper.
Yeah.
And so Sleepytime Trio wasn't the 7 layers deep, but I was definitely like, oh, this was interesting. Like, I see what you guys got going on. And so for you, I'm kind of asking this, retroactively in regards to you looking back, like when did you, because you still care about music, when did you notice, like, I guess people, recognizing the work that Sleepytime did, where you're just like, no one should pay attention to this band anymore, but they do, and that's cool. So like, when did you notice that?
I'm not sure I did. I'll be honest. Right. Like I sort of went after Sleepytime, but Sleepytime never ended. We just went on a hiatus. Like we never broke up, which is why you'll see in some of the accessories that come with this this re-release of the record and some of the documentation. Like I think the longest break we took in the last 35 years was 7 years. There was always something, you know what I mean? But in 1998, after we got off, we toured the year before we toured, Europe and the States back to back, and it was 5 months, and it pretty much killed us. Like it was a severe stressor to our relationships and the relationships that we had with our family and everything else too. Like I was newly married, so I was on tour for 5 months of the first year I was married then, and never really lived that down. And I mean that, like I call that my training marriage. That marriage did not last. And that's a great thing. It wasn't supposed to, but, so got back from that tour, made a deal with my then partner that was like, she was like, oh, if you're going to leave for that long, I'm not telling you don't have to do that. I'm just telling you that I'd rather be left in a different city. So we moved to Seattle, and you moved to Seattle in 98. And, Sleepytime, like, even though we did some East Coast tours, and I would fly back and stuff like that. I kind of, left. I stopped. I'm still always playing music, but I didn't pay attention. Right.
Sure.
Like I was focused on other things, most notably just becoming an alcoholic, but at that time, but there's the brutal honesty. So I didn't ever see the people, like, if people were trying, like, excited or finding out about Sleepytime Trio, or there was a movement toward digging in and finding these obscure, and I wasn't aware of it, right? To me, it was always just like, I'm in this band that has had some boutique level of success, and wow, that kind of continues. Like, we can go kind of anywhere and 50 people will show up, and, so I wasn't aware of that side of things, right? It just seemed to me like it was just a continuation of what it always had been, which was a very small modicum of success, of boutique level success. I don't know if that's what you mean. I just wasn't aware,
No, that is, and truthfully, I think it's, you guys are interesting in that fact that, like you said, there was never an official, breakup. Because usually, like, especially bands of this genre, independent music in general, where it's like, usually you burn really brightly for a very short period of time. Because
right.
You're doing these, ridiculous tours. And you're just like, I'm just drinking from the fire hose. Like, everything's exciting.
We don't say no,
There's 45 split 7 inches or whatever.
Yeah.
But, that the conceit that you guys never actually, officially, like, broke up because, you had this big blowout and you all hated each other or whatever. It was just like, oh yeah, we're just not playing some shows for like 7 years.
Well, I mean, there was no big blowout. It was mostly like, I just don't want to be around you right now. I still love you, but man, I can't stand you right now.
Sure.
And, it was, and it wasn't everybody. It was, everybody had their own things, like, and not just that, but like, everybody had other musical pursuits at that time too. Like, Jonathan was doing Engine Down, and David was in Men's Recovery Project, and Rob Ross, and so everybody had other things to focus on too. But we were smart enough and mature enough to know that, like, hey, let's not. I don't hate you. You're moving across the country. It's going to affect us anyways, just by location. There's no reason to have that finality of breaking up. Let's just kind of like go on hiatus, and we called it that,
and that's probably truly why, like, that suspended state of animation, it doesn't lead you to follow along like you were talking about, where it's just like, oh, see any sort of like resurgence or attention, and like a lot of this stuff you could obviously more easily track now than you could 15 years ago.
Sure.
When the internet was in its infancy. But to your point of just that idea that, like, yes, by proximity, we're not going to be playing that many shows and doing this stuff, but we're still going to, exist. And when it makes sense, we'll make music together or play shows.
Sure. And the other thing too is probably out of everybody in the band, I'm also the I wouldn't say full Luddite, but like the most in the Luddite camp when it comes to social media and paying attention to, like, I love going to shows and finding new music, and I have never stopped that. In fact, it's only kind of grown, because it's sort of almost like, in a way, gotten harder, but like, even though accessibility has gotten easier, and but I'm not on social media. I mean, I'm on Instagram, and my wife tells me when it's someone's birthday, and I go and I say happy birthday. But like, I'm not on. I mean, you can find me, but I'm on Facebook, but you'll see that, like, there's birthday messages from 5 years ago I haven't seen.
So you're not checking the DMs.
No.
Yeah. So we'll peel apart some of those things that we were talking about there, but the specific, I wanted to drill down on the Virginia aspect, just because, like, that particular part of the country, DC, broadly speaking, like all of that, seemed like a really interesting ground to not only play in bands, because from a geographical perspective, it was obviously accessible to a lot of places. What was your experience, I guess, like coming up in Virginia and then obviously getting introduced to, the scene, as it were, there?
Yeah, I think that just to start out, like in 1987, I was living in Newport, Rhode Island, right? A little eighth grader, skateboarding around, listening to like the local hardcore bands like Verbal Assault and and then my parents said, like, we're moving to DC. And I was like, fuck yes, you're moving me to the Mecca. And, and so I was super excited in 1987 to be moving to Washington, DC. And that sort of never ended. It's just like, at least at that time, it was a magical place. Right. And, to be a freshman in high school and live in a city that had decent mass transit and where every single show is all ages. And being able to convince my parents by that most of these shows are positive 4 shows. There's no alcohol or drugs at them. There's always even a nice philanthropic reason for spending your money. It was pretty easy sell to let me convince them to allow me to go to these shows, as a 14, 15-year-old. And then, so it was always a magical place. But as I started, that's when I moved there is when I started playing guitar, and being a recovered addict. I played guitar obsessively, like 5 hours a day, like I do everything that way. And then started to try playing bands in high school, and then wanted to stay in Virginia for college. So I went to JMU, and it was 2 hours. I knew it was like, okay, this is perfect. It's a beautiful school. It's in the mountains. I like the idea of being able to go camping every weekend, and it's 2 hours from DC. So I'm not like that far removed. Very quickly, I was able to find, people, real life people to play music with, And I don't know if you know this, but so David Neesmith and I are the 2 guitar players in Sleepytime Trio. We were in a band before that called Maximilian Colby that started there. But before that, my freshman year, we were in a hip hop band where he was one of 3 MCs. I played bass with another great bass player, this guy, John Harrison, who went on to play bass in that band Bells on Trike. And so I started playing music with David when I was 18 in a hip hop band. We played our first show in a basement with Bikini Kill and Nation of Ulysses. And
that's a pretty incredible show.
Again,
I love that.
All of this is total luck. I mean,
right.
Like the Nation of Ulysses just showed up with Bikini Kill. They had moved to DC like the day before, and they were like, hey, can our friend's band play? And so this is my very long-winded way of saying is that, like, there was it was just being in the right place at the right time. That includes getting to play shows with great bands. That includes just being, lucky enough to be moved to Washington, D.C. in 1987. Like, I had no say in that. You try to, like, position yourself a little bit, but, like, it was just luck and being in the right place at the right time.
To say we're in the middle of a vinyl renaissance is an understatement. And the beautiful people at Wicker Wood Works completely understand that. For them, vinyl never left. It's been here the whole time. And what they do is they are a custom woodworking, furniture building machine up in the Pacific Northwest. The reason I say machine is not because, yes, they use machines, but independently owned and operated. They actually just recently suffered a devastating fire that completely tarnished their warehouse and made it inoperable. But they were able to pivot very quickly, and now they're manufacturing again. I am so excited for you to check out their offerings at wickerwoodworks.com. And on top of that, they have a promo code for this very show. use it 100 words for 10% off orders of $500 for the listeners of this show. Straight up, this is for you. And if you collect vinyl, I don't care how big your collection is. Small, medium, large, they have a piece of furniture for everything. I have one in my office. Every time a person comes in, they're like, whoa, is this custom made? I'm like, yeah, but you can get one right now. And they also have really, really cool, vinyl storage, like crates. They just have it all. So if you collect vinyl and you want a rad way to display it, Wicker Wood Works is your spot. And again, use the promo code 100 words for 10% off orders of over $500. Go support them because they need it, because they're rebuilding. And I love what they do.
Wherever you go, whatever they get into, from chill time to everyday adventures, protect your dog from parasites with Credelio Quattro. For full safety information, side effects, and warnings, visit CredeliaQuattroLabel.com. Consult your vet or call 1-888-545-5973. Ask your vet for Credelio Quattro and visit QuattroDog.com.
And a lot of that, too, is the watching something like that incubate to where it gets to a point in the early 90s and mid 90s where then you feel like you could have your own scene that's obviously inspired from everything that came before you.
Right. But I will say, and maybe this is because I'm old, maybe I don't know, but like the one thing that was truly unique and exciting was like hearing bands at that time that was like music that I had never heard. Right. Like circus, like it was punk, or you could still put it in a genre. Right. But sonically it was like, I can't compare this to anything. And that was like hearing Slint for the first time, or hearing Jehu for the first time, or hearing like Circus Lupus for the first time. Those bands, there wasn't really, I mean, you could say, oh yeah, Circus Lupus. Yeah. Chris Thompson sounds like The Fall when he sings. Yes, he does. But like, musically, I didn't, like it was new. And people can debate me on that. That's fine. I have spent the rest of my life trying to find things that made me feel that excited, new. Like, I've never heard anything like this. This is fucking exciting,
Right.
And again, time and place. I can tell you, I told the story this week. There were a few, most of that music I heard live for the first time, not on album, and including Jehu, like that. It's that. So I guess summer of 1992, home from college, the transition from my sophomore year to my junior year, I guess. I was friends with this guy, Justin, who played in this band called Pitch Blend. And he was like, hey, I'm playing 930 Club, the original 930 Club tonight, opening for this band from San Diego. You should come see my band. So I go, and there's like, there's probably 20 people at the show. And they play, and they're great. And then this dude comes out on stage, and he's wearing those noise canceling ear protection airport headphones, and picks up his Les Paul and starts to play the most amazing music I've ever heard in my life. And it turned out to be Drive Like Jehu. And I just happened to be there. All 16 to 20 people in that room, I'm still like friends with to this day. If I didn't like it, everybody in that room went home and started a band. And like that night, like Maximilian Colby was born because David was there, and we were like, we've got to start playing music again. My like bands like Action Patrol were born. Who's Got Cable from Richmond was all there, and they started playing in a band. Like that night changed Richmond, DC forever.
I love those stories when you can point at particular shows that it's like, it's not about the amount of people, but it's like, every person in attendance at that
Yeah.
particular show went on to do something, and it doesn't have to be like sizable, but just be like, oh, this person started the zine, this person started this,
Yeah.
whatever. It's like all of that can be pointed.
Looking back, it reminds me of that scene in 24-Hour Party. People were I think it's the Sex Pistols playing. They go to like Marky Smith started the fall. Joy Division started. Like all of the Manchester bands were at that show and started like basically the next day because they were so inspired, you know?
It totally. So when you started to, play in bands and obviously have like the, Maximilian Kolbe and starting to experience that, did playing in bands, I guess, like come easy for you as far as like getting on a, I'm going to use the word stage, even though we were obviously playing on floors.
Yeah.
How was the, your experience doing that?
It was like, there's a reason that so many of us in later, no one at the time, but years later was then titled emo. We just thought we were in post-punk or rock bands, but there was a reason we all faced our amps, It was to hear them, but it was because we were all shy, sensitive, little people. The thing that I learned then, which has carried me throughout life, was that like preparation is king, right? I can get on a stage now and feel very confident, but it is directly tied to how prepared I am, right?
Okay. Sure.
And that has carried forward, but I didn't know that. I learned that lesson by starting to play in bands, right? So, Max, I was talking to David about this yesterday. How lucky we were. Like Maximilian Kolbe practiced 5 times a week for at least 3 to 4 hours every week. We practiced. I mean, that's a lot of practice. Like, and to like be in a situation like he didn't even know how to play guitar before that band, and to have that much time to focus on it, and like, I don't think without having that period of that 1.5 to 2 year period of my life of practicing 4 to 5 times a week for 3 to 4 hours ago, I don't think I would have been able to find the confidence to get on stage. Right. So yeah, it's for me, at least, it was all because I did not have the confidence before. And I like for these Sleepytime shows that are coming up, like I'm practicing an hour a day, like every day, 2 months ahead of time, because that's what it takes,
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
That's what it takes for me to get on stage and feel good about it and feel like people are spending money. I would feel like shit if someone paid to see something that was mediocre.
Totally get that. You definitely feel, I mean, even if you are, in your late teens, early 20s or whatever, it's like there's just that notion, especially that's embedded within us that are raised within, the punk and hardcore subculture, is that like you're giving the maximum amount of effort regardless of if it's -4 people or 100.
Hell yeah. And in fact, I still to this day rather have 10 people at the show who are fucking stoked than 500 who are just like, okay. It's sort of kind of like why I don't love playing festivals. I will do them, but you sometimes feel like you're just another entree on the mile-wide buffet line, And whereas it's great it's great because instead of going on tour, everybody tours to see you, so you can like play a show for a lot of people from a lot of different places by playing a festival. There is that aspect of it. And it does come down to me, like that energy, like we'll still put on the same show and it will still be excited. And it will be, reverent, real excitement. Right. But it's not going to be like, but as soon as we start feeling that energy back from the crowd, that's when it really gets exciting, and it could be negative energy too. I'd rather have people screaming, like, fuck you than just being quiet.
I just want to get a reaction. Are you live out there?
Yeah, I can react to negative energy, and I can react to negative energy. What's tough to work with is no energy.
Totally get that. The something I'll ask you to compare and contrast, because like I was mentioning, from my experience in Southern California, it's like, San Diego was just a mecca for all of those bands that you were kind of mentioning, Jehu, but then also just like so much of that interesting, screamo stuff, whatever you want to call it. But then obviously you had Ebullition up in Santa Barbara.
Sure.
And so like, and you guys obviously had a conclave of bands out there. Did you, I guess, notice what was happening out on the West?
Oh, hell yeah.
Okay.
I mean, like, for me, there's labels, right? So like, it was just like whatever Gravity Records was putting out, I was going to buy. Right. And so that was when I think of that. That's not the only one. Right. But we were all reading Heart Attack. We were all like, paying attention. There's, and then there was some of the more poppier stuff. Like I wasn't a big pop punk guy, but sure, I still loved Sam.I.Am and then Jawbreaker and that ilk. Not fair to really call Jawbreaker a pop band, but absolutely was paying attention. And that didn't start then. It was like there was always, especially being in DC, there was always West Coast music. Like the greatest punk bands in America, half of them came from the West Coast. Like for me, being worshiping the Minutemen and to me, that's pretty high up on the list. Now, and then later, there was not that there were big gaps or anything, but like, of course, Jehu and all that as well. And then any band Justin Pearson was doing, and like of the 400 bands he's done and doing, he's in 400 bands right now. So, and you start to develop ties, like they play when you come, and not like to this day, I'm good friends with a lot of those people. Like Justin Pearson's a good example of somebody who we stay in contact and we talk. And when they come to the East, they stay with me. And when I go there, and so those relationships are pretty special. And I, for the most part, I didn't, and maybe I'm different, but I kind of didn't create it, at least in my head. I didn't really think of it as East and West,
Sure. Like just like different pockets of scene.
Right.
Really.
Yeah.
I get what you're saying.
You know what I mean? I just kind of like saw it as like Portland too, right? Like, cause like a little bit later, like Portland came, not Olympia, even more so. Like the connection between, it seemed like there was a zip line between Olympia and DC for a while too, and so I just saw these places as islands, that we were all on our own sort of like islands that had a communication and influencing each other, and maybe a friendly competition. I don't know. I've never felt competitive, but I don't know, support for sure,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Which is cool, because that, like you said, even though the word competition feels dirty when you're talking about art, but it's like, truthfully, when you see a band, play and you're like, dude, they crush, like, we got to do a little bit better. We got to like not suck. Like they show up. We got to show up too.
Or it's as simple as like, I loved how they did this thing, maybe we need to turn around occasionally, or, whatever it is,
Sure.
But they're obviously sonically influences too. So yeah, I love that stuff, man. I love finding little scenes. I'm a huge believer in right now, and there's being some scene in some small town that we have no idea about, and we probably won't ever know about. That's amazing, and I love, whether that exists or not, I choose to believe it does. And I think that's so awesome to think. And I'm not saying, maybe it's in Indonesia, or like when people are like, oh, there's nothing new, or, like, I'm always like, yes, there is. We just have to find it,
Well, you're not looking hard enough. Yeah, exactly.
And you can look really hard and still not find it. And that's even more beautiful,
Evilgreed.net is the place you need to point your web browser to buy all of the cool heavy merchandise and music and records. I love Evil Greed, and they have a very specific point of view on the type of labels and bands that they work with. Truly, it reminds me of like the mid-90s when you trip on an amazing distro at a show where you're like, I think I need like at least $500 to spend at this particular table. And what makes it even cooler, what Evil Greed does, is they want you to save money. 10% off of your first order by using this promo code specifically geared towards this podcast. It is a discount available only to you using the word reunion. 10% off of your first order. They're based in Berlin, Germany, but they ship worldwide, and the shipping rates to us here in the US are very advantageous. So don't just calm down about the tariffs. Stuff will get to us, and it will be awesome. Evil Greed works with labels like Sargent House and Death Wish and Flat Spot. I don't care what style of heavy you are into. They got it. They got it in spades. They have exclusive colors of vinyl. They have clothing. They are the spot. So go to evilgreed.net. Use the promo code REUNION for 10% off your first order now. I want to hit on some of the releases and touring stuff that you participated in. Like I remember my entry point to Sleepytime Trio was the 400 Year split.
Okay.
And what struck me about that was like both bands were obviously doing their own, version of obviously like, emotional hardcore or whatever that may mean.
Yeah.
What memories are evoked when I bring that release up? Because correct me if I'm wrong, but at that juncture, like 400 Years was not only more established, but maybe a little more popular.
Yeah.
Was that okay?
Maybe I mean, so we met 400 Years. Sleepytime did this summer tour over 21. It was 19 days. It was 19 days, 21 shows, and we went from, I think it basically from Mississippi and Florida, I think, and up through Canada. It ended with like 5 shows in Canada, and those shows in Canada were where we started with Shotmaker, and that's where we met 400 Years, because we played that portion, and then this band from your neck of the woods, at least, 17 Queen, and which had come out of the just recently defunct Portraits of Past. So it was Rex, and so that's where we ran into 400 Years and developed a relationship. Right that summer was when they moved to Richmond, right? And so we, started playing a few shows with them. Then I'm terrible with timelines, but like pretty soon right after that, they were like, hey, we're touring Europe with Julia. And we're like, yeah, that's cool. And then like Darren called Dave and was like, Julia can't do it. To Sleepytime want to come. And we're like, well, yes, we do. So we did, and that was like, 2.5, 3 month tour. And we're like, well, let's just do the States right when we get back to back. So we ended up doing 5 months with 400 Years. Like it isn't. And so that's when I got to know those guys. And it just so happens that I think that 7-inch came out, like we rushed it so that we'd have it on the tour. Right. I still love their music and those, but like, I got to know those guys in that band on that tour. And, so it was like, inundation and characters, like it was like immediate, like, hey, you're not just hanging out, you're traveling with these people. But there was, so I didn't really know them other than having played shows with them. And like, they were new to me. I didn't know their band before then. Was aware of Groundwork because the original drummer in Maximilian Kolbe was in the Connecticut Groundwork.
which there's also an Arizona Groundwork.
Well, that's where the 400-year Dave Jackson was in the Arizona Groundwork, and I just
I don't know
yeah,
if I ever knew that. Wow,
yeah.
okay.
So like when I met them, I was immediately had stories that were slightly negative because they definitely tried to bully the Connecticut Groundwork, and the Connecticut Groundwork's like reply to them was like, you guys are weird. Why don't we just like, why are you being like, you can't be this band? They're like, instead, let's just put out a split 7-inch. Like,
yeah,
so I was
a Groundwork split 7.
yeah. And so I like gave him shit for that. And,
sure.
But there was always like, at least maybe between me and Dave Jackson, and like, there was a healthy competition to like, he would be like, how many shirts did you sell tonight? And I'd be like, I don't know, dude. But there was kind of, but it was fun and playful. I didn't start to really sort of get competitive. None of us ever really just thought about it that way, and I'm fine with it. Like, I don't think, my first question myself is like, maybe there's some denial in that, but like, which is very possible, but like, I don't know, man. Like, I think that 400 Years wrote great songs that were super catchy. And, if they were more popular, I would probably, I didn't seem to care.
Well, and truthfully, by though, especially at that level where you're just like, if we are getting 30 people to show up to a show and another band is getting 50 people, it's like, hey, this is 80 people. This is great. Like, it's the sum of its parts as opposed to like, you're in competition with one another.
Right. And it's like, we definitely always want to go, Sleepytime always wants to like melt faces at shows, right? We want to try to be the best band we can be. But it's never like we want to be better than the bands we're playing with. It's just like, we don't think about it that way. We just think about it as like, it's the same reason why like people are like, oh, like there's bands who are like, you're like, hey, do you guys want to play first? Some bands are like, no, I don't want to play first. We're the type of guys who are like, yeah, man, we'll play first. We don't care, like.
Sure. Sounds great. Yeah.
And then we got to a point where people were like, well, you guys can't, no, you can't play first. And we're like, we want to play first. And I'm like, well, you can't. And they're like, okay, but we'll play when it doesn't matter.
Right.
Because that, like, I don't know.
Yeah. When, a lot of the times too, like this particular genre, and honestly, your guys' recordings as well, like when it comes to trying to document the sound and obviously the feeling of the live show into the recorded aspect, it's difficult. And especially at that time too, where it's like, you're talking about recording on tape, et cetera, et cetera. Did you feel like any of the recordings that you, did, whether it was, Memory Minus or Plus or anything that you guys did you feel like, what would you feel is like the most reflective of the live experience of who you guys were?
That's a good question. I hadn't thought about it until recently because of these. So we can say it like, so the anthology is being re-released by Love It, and it's a co-release with Love It and Solid Brass, and not quite half, but the songs that we could remix where we had tapes, it's remixed and remastered. And so for the first time, I always thought about it just like, well, this is the best we could do. This is the document we had. There are things I don't like about it, but but those same things that I don't like are also what makes it. And so I was always kind of okay with that. I've never been like bummed by, there's some things that I didn't like. Right. So this was an opportunity to, fix some of the things that I personally ruined, I think, in the original recordings. I was the guy pushing like more bass all the time, more bass, and like more low end. And that record's like too low endy, and it's my fault, you know? So it was an opportunity to fix that. Going back to your confidence question, I think we finally had the confidence to turn up the vocals a little bit. Which is a nice thing. It's, you know, we've been getting really good feedback. Like my wife, who when I were friends for 10 years before we even started dating, she's friends with everybody in the band and is like in her own right. She has her own relationship she's in the best critic, because like she has known us from the beginning. And she was like, I can finally tell in the recording who's singing which part for the first time.
It's not just like blended all in together, right?
Yeah.
Which is cool. And that's because, yeah, I mean, the reason I mentioned that is because, yeah, it's like a lot of recordings at that particular time. It was not only was it difficult to document it, because most of the time all the engineers and, you know, I'm going to use air quotes, producers you were working with were just like, what is this noise? Like, this is terrible. I'll just press record. I guess it's.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is, we always went in, like, from a performance point of view, I've always gone in super, super ready. So it's never like performance that I'm bummed about. Sonically, it's like, yeah, that could have been better, but it's just, it is what it is in a document. So that's what we could do at the time, but that's how it was. But to get back to your question of the songs best represent, I think so. For the original songs were recorded with Max Henkel at Neptune. And then the second time we recorded, and it's kind of hard to remember where most of these songs went, but like the majority of songs that went onto the 12-inch plus 6,000, those songs, we did half of them. We recorded them all with Jay Robbins, but we recorded half of them in his basement on 8-track in the Jawbox practice space, and then the other half at GNS in the studio. And we did that on purpose because we wanted to kind of like we picked songs that were sort of like, oh, these are the more gritty, straightforward rock songs. Let's record those on 8-track, and let's do the other 4 in a studio and have them. And that way that you have some yin and yang across the record, you know. But those songs that we record on 8-track, I think, are a little more gritty and a little more. It's hard to kind of put my finger why I like them. Part of it might be mixed in with me just liking that, not like basement process and doing it on 4-track, or it was an cassette 8-track, but I like those a lot. I appreciate all of it for what it was, though. You know what I mean? Like, for me, still to this day, going into the studio is just like a fun experience, you know? And it's, I still feel lucky to get to do it. You know, it's more, I still prefer having an engineer and, you know, someone smarter than me. Like, I do a lot of home recording, but man, I like to not be in charge and just focus on playing guitar, screaming, you know.
Get that.
But yeah, I think those songs, but I appreciate it all, you know.
Sure.
I still listen. Yeah, I've been, to prepare for these shows and stuff, I've been listening to this music, and I don't normally drive around listening to my music, but these days the way I practice my vocals is on the way to Home Depot daily or the grocery store, I have a towel in the car and I scream into the towel to the songs. That's how I get my voice ready. And the reason I scream into the towel so that there isn't too much spittle when I'm done on the windshield. And so, cause I'm a disgusting man I don't know, when you scream, sometimes fluids come out. Sorry, folks. It's true. It's also to kind of hide. So it kind of makes it more look like, especially if someone's driving next to me, so they don't just like look over and see this man just like screaming. It's just kind of hilarious. I kind of don't mind that, but, it does it's a little bit of camouflage as well. But yeah. I've been listening to the songs, right? And the point is that like, it's just, I still get the feeling that I got when I was like 13 of like, you write a guitar part and you play with a drummer for the first time and you're like, holy shit, like this is, and it's like no longer just yours, and you're like, it's writing music is so exciting. And like, and I hope this doesn't sound egotistical. It's meant more like out of gratitude that like, I'm pretty proud of those songs. And like, they seem, and maybe I'm wrong, but they seem to have a little bit of legs. Like it seems to hold up a little bit, and like, because I know there's music I've recorded where I'm like, oh, I can't listen. That does not have legs. That is no longer relevant music. But the Sleepytime stuff, it's like, well, it's okay to be proud, a little bit have some pride, and to think that these songs still sound good. But so I kind of just accept them all for what they are and how they're recorded in the process. And just like, I just appreciate the memories of getting to do it for the most part. And, that's, and then be gracious that at least to me, the songs don't suck. There's one or two that are not the hottest tracks. There's one or two songs we don't play, that are not exciting to us. And if they're not exciting to us, then it wouldn't be right to play them, because then, but for the most part,
you're like, and you can make that executive decision as a band to be like, oh yeah, we don't want to play these songs, so we don't like them much.
Like putting together a set for what are the songs we're going to play? We're not that we're necessarily going to have a set every night, but like, I at least want to not waste time relearning a song that we're definitely not playing, and it's we used to call the band an oligarchy before that has sort of, over the last 5 years, oligarchy has taken much more of a negative connotation, geopolitically. But, like if any one person in Sleepytime Trio has always had veto power. Like we don't do anything unless everybody's on board. And that goes with every decision we make as a band. So that includes like, if there's any song that even one person's not stoked about, we're not going to do it.
Rockabilia.com is the place where I love to buy band merch that is officially licensed from bands of all shapes and sizes: hardcore, punk, metal, indie rock, mainstream pop. I don't care what it is that you're into. You'll be able to find something and use this promo code. 100 words or less gets you 10% off of your first order, and that is specific to this show. So don't ignore it. Don't just go on the website and be like, what was that promo code? 100 words or less. I try to make it easy for you. But my son, he's loving music now, and his music tastes are expanding. And when I showed him rockabilia.com, he was like, wait, you can order this all from one place? I'm like, yeah. And it's all like high quality stuff? I'm like, yeah, officially licensed. That means the bands get paid. And I got him stoked even more because I'm like, you're supporting, hardcore and punk kids, even though he does not like hardcore and punk. And that's totally fine because he's his own person. But you're supporting independent businesses, and you're supporting a company that's been in business for over 30 years, so they know what they're doing. Customer service is top shelf if you ever run into any problems, and they ship from the Midwest here in the United States of America, so it gets to you very, very fast. Use the promo code 100 words or less for 10% off your first order. Do it now, and maybe buy that Beatles shirt for yourself, or maybe buy the really cool metal Iron Maiden shirt, like whatever it is you're into. Go buy it at rockabilia.com. Like you mentioned, I was going to ask about your touring experiences. And like you said, did a lot of weekends, obviously all over the place, but that 5-month tour that you did, I mean, I guess I'll ask this in two parts. One, did you enjoy touring, I guess, before that? And then the second part is like, how did your relationship with touring change, obviously, after you were gone for that long?
So I am, Pennsylvania is the 13th state I've lived in, where I live now. I grew up moving it every year and a half of my life to a new state up until when I moved to Virginia. And the idea of, by the time, like, I think the first, I grew up, like, from my first memories are driving back and forth between the East and West Coast. Like, it was just something we did. So, like, touring in a van and sleeping in weird places and was just second nature to me, and still is to this day. Like, my partner and I only work so that we can get ready for our next trip somewhere. I am a travel fiend, be it with a van, any way I can get out on the road. I try to, or whatever. So, like, I felt like I was born for it when I was, there was nothing. I get no better sleep than when I'm up in the loft with like an inch of space between me and the top of the van, in some weird snuggled in place. I'm not, in fact, I sleep better if I'm in, like, the more claustrophobic, the better. I love touring. And so that's not the hard part of touring. Like, for me, at least, like 14-hour drives still to this day, whatever, it's just an opportunity to, hey, I don't have to work. I can listen to a book on tape and look at stuff and stop at mini marts and try to find weird sodas. And, like, it's the best. The hard part about touring is obviously, that you're in a 10-foot by 5-foot box with 5 to 6 people, and everyone's got a different personality. And no matter how much you love them, over time, that's got to be tough to navigate.
Yes, very true.
And I've used that, like, in my, like, when I first started dating my current partner and now wife, I was living in Seattle. She was here in Philadelphia. And it was like, well, one of us has are you moving here or am I moving there? I was like, I tell you what, I'm going to quit my job. I was managing the web department at the PBS station in Seattle, and because I was so house poor, living in Seattle, I had a ton of vacation. I was like, I'm going to quit my job. I have a bunch of vacation to cash out, and you and I are going to go backpacking through Asia for 4 months. And if we don't kill each other at the end of that and we still like each other, I'll move to Philadelphia. And she's like, awesome. Cause she has Wanderlust too still. And it is a great travel partner. And so I've always like that idea of like, hey, let's like do this thing and find out if we can like, and either break or make this relationship. I learned that from touring,
Sure. Which is great. With, I mean, obviously you guys are doing these shows, in celebration of the re-release and, remix and remastering. How do you guys, I guess, like, get back in the idea of obviously like playing shows and doing this? Like, is it a simple matter of just being like, oh, this opportunity presents itself and like we got to, and then obviously these other things happen? How do you guys kind of, I guess, rekindle that?
Yeah, we've always,
break you're on.
Ever since 98, we made a rule that was like, it has to be an experience we all want to have, or with a band that we all want to play with, or a place that we all want to go. And so we just agreed on that litmus test for like, okay, we'll play shows when it's one of those three things. Sometimes it's more than one, but like it has to be one of those three things. And so we've stuck by that. And that's why, and it's worked well for it. I mean, like the shows are always special because we make, that's the rule, and rules sound strong, but that's the, boundary litmus test, whatever.
Sure.
And so like, hey, do you guys want to tour Japan? I don't know. Does everybody, I'm the only one in the band without kids. So I'm always like, yes to everything. But even now we've got some opportunities. Even this morning, there was an opportunity to go someplace, and it's like very exciting to me.
Sure.
And I'm finding out if it's exciting to others in the band.
Right. Well, I mean, it's cool. The reason I ask that is because, like, obviously every group of individuals that comprises a band, reacts differently to all of those opportunities like you're talking about. And so it's like, and then some people, understandably, over time, like their enthusiasm dies to either play live music or like do new music or whatever the case may be.
Right.
It's cool that you guys have been able to keep it close enough to where it's like, oh yeah, we're still able to do the things when it makes sense for us.
Well, there's sort of two other parts to the question you just asked. One, like in 1995, pretty much as Max Colby ended, when Bob died, and Sleepytime was already in like a band. It was an actual trio, and we were playing shows, just the three of us. And so there was an overlap there. And David, from when Max Colby ended, joined Sleepytime Trio, and there's stories there and stuff, but it just made sense. Pretty much immediately, that's when I graduated from JMU. Like, pretty much immediately, at least 3 out of 4 of us were living in different cities, right? So the lifetime of Sleepytime Trio was always somebody's traveling, usually at least 2 people to practice. And for years, I would finish work. I was working at NPR in DC on a Monday night in downtown. And every night I would leave Monday night and drive to Richmond in traffic, have band practice, and then drive home and get up and go to work that Tuesday morning for years. Like, I know that drive between DC and Richmond like no other,
Sure.
And I could do it on autopilot. And so we've always, because of us always being from disparate places, right, treated playing music as a catalyst to getting together to see each other. And because, like, if we all lived in the same city, I'm not sure, and we could actually just have a bonfire and hang out, maybe these shows wouldn't be happening, But
sure.
But it's the only way that we can figure out to get together and see each other. And because we are family, and as silly as that might sound to some people, but the bonds, I say, there's types of all kind, there's some dudes who they have that golf weekend once a summer. They see all their old buddies, or they go fishing. I don't know, whatever you name it. For us, playing music is that, the catalyst for us to be able to see each other. Right. So that's a part of it. The other thing you mentioned was like, I'm 52 years old. How the hell does a 52-year-old man get ready to play a show like that? And so we have always, even then, continued to take it seriously and not phone it in. Everybody in the band takes wonderfully as people, just in living our lives. Like, we each individually believe in having some sort of body, mind, spirit program, and taking care of our bodies. We all do it different ways, but most of us are runners. And all the stuff, I think most of us have therapists. I think most of us, but most meditation, whatever. So, but we do talk a lot about how, what are you doing physically to get ready for these shows? And so we all have our own little program. One of the things I do is I get on the treadmill and I start the set I just have a playlist, and I sprint on the treadmill from the beginning of the set to the end, and I don't get to stop until the set is over. And that's how I do it every day. I haven't started doing it. I did go to the gym today, but like, so physically, we think it's important. It's a physical show. I want to have the energy to play these songs, you know? But then I practice for an hour a day. And then I drive around in my car and scream in a towel.
These are all the ways you prepare. Yeah.
Yeah. And I do, you know, I didn't do it before, but like I've had to learn to do, some vocal warm ups. And it's like Chris Richards from Q&A, taught me this really tricky way to do your vocal warm ups. And that's it's this like process of humming louder and louder and louder. But what he would do is he would warm up his vocals. He would always watch the opening bands and hum, and just do these vocal exercises with the bands, even if he didn't know their music. And he's like, it's great. You get all this credit for watching the bands. And then like they're like, you're so great. You always are there to watch the opening bands and not being in the back room like so many other people. And his secret is that he's just doing his vocal warm-ups, totally selling him out. But it's so just shit like that you figure out along the way. Like, it's like, oh, I don't lose my voice when I do these things. And, you know, there was back then it was like, I don't know how to do all that stuff. That's lame. I'm just a punk rock kid. Prepping for a show is, what are you, Metallica? But then it comes like, people are paying $20. You don't, of course, you know what I mean? Like,
take it seriously. Right.
Take it freaking seriously. Not too, you know what I mean? Like, you're not curing cancer here, but at the same time, like, be good. Put on a good show.
Totally. That's why people are here for it. The last thing I wanted to ask was 400 Years was ostensibly your sister band, just because you obviously played a lot of shows and a lot of activity around that. What were some of the other bands that you had a close kinship with that either did not get, maybe their, time in the sunshine or like weren't documented properly, any of that sort of stuff. So, I guess I'm giving you the ability to be like, hey, here's the bands that like we played with that were really either important or monumental to us that maybe just put out a 7-inch and no one knows about that.
I mean, as far like, there's like sort of two answers there, right? Like, yes, the bands that we were like, we were in the same orbits with, right? Or like in the same circles, that we were like just adored and influenced us and wanted to be like, and like there was, for us, there was nothing better locally than like Hose Got Cable. Like, and that band is fucking amazing. And I love those people still. And we played a ton of shows with them. We even got to, like, as far as like, oh, that's the mark musically, but then there's this, but different people had different relationships with the members of the band. David was really close. He grew up and went to high school with like most of those guys in the Virginia burbs. And then like the same sort of thing, like I was never like super close with like Avail and that, but at the same time, like I started seeing Avail when they were from Russian, Virginia. I mean, before they moved to Richmond, and like a lot, and loved those back when Tim was the drummer, not the singer. And Brian Cashman was the singer. I did a band with him in high school. That was terrible. But so those were the bands we looked up to and kind of knew and had relationships with. And they were really like our Maximilian Colby's first out of state show. My first out of state show was because Avail brought us to Philadelphia. But the bands we were like, I never felt like on par with like peers with necessarily, probably because I just put those bands up on such, certainly not Avail just from a popularity point of view, but like Hose Got Cable from a just like they are swamis at what they do. There's no way I will be able to ever wield that kind of magic, But band, 400 as far as peers, it was Shotmaker, 400 years, later Frodis, I'm sure, and from a West Coast, even though there wasn't a lot of, playing shows with like some of Justin Pearson's bands, VSS and the bands after VSS, those are the ones that come to like. It's interesting. Like Portraits of Past is going to play here later this month. I never played with those bands, but because of our connection with Rex, like I've been talking to Rob from that band like every other day, just about. I've never even met the guy, but because of our past and because I've been trying to help them with the Philly show and some, like, it's like, I already know I'm going to show up and we're going to go out for vegan pizza and it's going to be, so it's weird. It's not the relationships and the peers. A lot of the ones I have, you'll meet somebody that you've never met, but because your bands you both went through the same crucible, you have this, like, you're like instant friends because you have so much you can relate to.
Absolutely.
Like Mike Berdan, as we started this conversation, who I just met, he was a lifelong friend of my wife's. Like, I felt like I'd known that guy forever, And so, like, that happens all the time because of this thing that we got to do.
There you have it. That was Drew from Sleepytime Trio. Thank you very much for hanging out with me one afternoon. It was a great chat. And like I said, Sleepytime Trio, playing some shows, doing the thing, putting out discography on Solid Brass Records. Check it all out. There's links in the show notes, as they always are. Next week is another exciting reunion and an episode discussing said reunion. It is Garrett Klon from Texas Is the Reason. I know I just had Scott from the band on like 2-3 weeks ago, but they're doing reunion shows. I'm just excited. So the fact that I was able to have 2 conversations with members of the band, get different perspectives, but yet understanding who these people fundamentally are and why they're playing shows again, it's incredibly exciting. So I could not pass up Garrett because he is a prolific dude and he's been playing in a ton of bands. And I'm just excited to bring that to you next week. So that's what we have. And until then, please be safe, everybody.
Basketball game? Crushed it. And the day's just getting started. Now, kicking it with my crew. When I need a quick snack, Go-Go Squeeze Active Fruit Blend with electrolytes pouches are always in the starting lineup. Made with real fruit and select electrolytes. And so tasty. From workouts to hangouts to whatever's next, I go with Go-Go Squeeze Active. Snag yours on your next store run. Available on Amazon.